So I am so excited to share today's guest with everyone. And it is actually someone that one of my favorite people to follow on social media. You have been for a while. I don't know if you know this, but every time you bring out your tarot scopes for all the signs every month, I send them to all the people I know. I'm sure this happens to you all the time. I'm like, okay, the Virgo one's going to my sister, the Scorpio one's going to my friend. Chris, I'm just so happy to be having a conversation with you today. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've also been following your account with the human design and all that stuff too. So it's cool. It's cool to be here.
And can you just tell, because I feel like you do such a mix of different things, how do you kind of like synthesize the sort of through line of what you offer in your own mind?
Oh God, that's like the challenge I run into every time people ask for like a bio. I think I'm just a person. Like I have gifts, I guess other people would call them, but like we all have the same gifts. So realistically, if you had to categorize that, I guess I would be like a psychic intuitive astrologer who helps guide people through readings and workshops. But I'm also a shop owner. I have a wellness center here in Lisbon. I have like a really good business mind, so I'm definitely wear that like CEO founder hat at times, and I'm an artist and a creative, so I also make music and production um and I'm a bit of like a philanthropist. Like I work a lot with, well, that's a strong word, but I work a lot with minority groups and different charities and organizations. So I don't know how to really put all of that into one sentence, but that's kind of who I am and what I do.
I wonder, as you're saying that, then, if you feel like, and I've never thought about this before, but whether you feel like actually there's so many people nowadays who are wearing that sort of like intuitive, spiritually tapped in hat and also
Hmm.
really driven to do business. I'm wondering out loud if that's a combination that's kind of always existed, or whether people are kind of waking up more to the fact that we all have those like both sides of us nowadays, or whether we need more people who are doing stuff in the world to have more of a spiritual connection and be sort of like light workers more than ever before. Do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think for sure, we all have access to the same gifts that I do, or that you do, or, everybody has access more or less to the same sort of intuitive process. Maybe it shows up differently for each people, but it's not special, so to speak. I think right now, we've never lived in a time like this. The earth has never gone through such contrast, I would say. So
Mm.
I think that contrast turns a lot of lights on, and a lot of us are being called deeper into ourselves and into our practice and into our service. And there's definitely people who can turn that light on easier, or let's say they come through with that almost hardwired, as opposed to they need to figure out how to wire it themselves.
Mm.
So yeah, I think it's one of those crazy times, and we're kind of on the brink of a lot of change. So there's definitely a need for more intuitives to come online and more energy workers to come online. The business aspect of it, I think, is interesting because, and I struggled with this for a long time, and I've done a lot of even like past life work on this because I've done a lot of this work in a lot of lifetimes, and I've always sort of traded like chickens for like energy work, or like, so this idea of reciprocity was always built in to the exchange, of course, but I've never been able to tap into so much abundance before. And I think that what I'm really enjoying about this lifetime is that money is energy, and it's allowing me to do a lot more work. So I think there's also this awakening that we're having within the spiritual community where like money is not intrinsically evil.
Mm.
Money is an amplifier, and we can use it how we want. So I think what I like to do, just by virtue of being, is also be an example of
Hmm.
like you can be spiritual and quote unquote successful, or whatever you want to call that. And then I also work closely with some clients and even just friends who are in this same work, and maybe they have issues stepping into activating like financial abundance, or abundance looks like a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but the idea that you can do this work, be spiritual, and make a shit ton of money is allowed, and I don't think that money is intrinsically dirty or anything like that. So that idea of like spirituality and business does come up a lot, and I've done a lot of work
Mm.
through that, and now I try to just, I don't know, help other people get to that same spot, you know?
And honestly, it's the only way that having this many people of service in this sort of spiritual way is sustainable, right, for the long term.
Totally.
Because if you are burnt out and unresourced, you can't be of service.
Of
So
course.
I think there's a reason why, God, the higher power, whatever you want to call it, once gives us this feeling of desire to be abundant. Because wouldn't we wish that for everyone in the world? Like, so why would we leave ourselves out
Absolutely.
of the equation? I know you have a lot to say about love and relationships. And you are really well versed in cord cutting, which I actually never really connected to cord cutting. I always thought it was one of those things that was like less, oh, I don't know if it works every time. And is it really that important? And, you know, a lot of different sort of stories I had around that until I actually did one and felt the visceral somatic impact of what that does. So,
Yeah.
for the person who doesn't actually know about cord cutting but kind of just thinks that they know or has heard about it before, can you explain like what the what the effects, like the potential effects of if you do cut a cord, like what does that actually tangibly in your life, the kind of results that you can see from it? Because I think that's what gets us interested in something, is when we realize like these things are not just like it's a cute little thing you do once that makes you feel better for 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think anything you do once that makes you feel better for 5 minutes probably isn't going to do much over time because, like everything, um, it's a muscle, right? Even our energetic body is a muscle to some degree, if that's what you want to call it. But this idea of building momentum and strengthening your frequency only comes by engaging in certain practices over time with rhythm and ritual and intentionality. So there's definitely a need to stick with it, and not to say that you need to be cutting the same chord over and over and over again, but you definitely need to build the momentum to really disengage from that connection. And I've had some clients who, I say clients, like they're not always one-on-one clients. They could just be people who follow my online work and engage in our workshops.
Mm-hmm.
But some of those clients have said like that they have just quite literally never experienced that type of emotional visceral reaction, and that it was like night and day. They woke up the next day and it was just gone, and like that is it was like a one-time thing for them, and then they were like cool and they could move on. And then I have other people who they struggle a bit more and they need to do the cord cutting 2 or 3 times. Not that it's not working, but at each time you engage it's going to a deeper level. So I think a good place to start is like, what is a chord to begin with? So we have chords with family, with friends, with lovers, especially people from past lifetimes,
Mm-hmm.
karmic connections, the twin flame, soulmate sort of vibe. And then if you are intimate or sexual with people, even like, I mean, this is TMI, but like even when you're like kissing somebody and your saliva is mixing, like that type of thing, and then in any other way that anything else mixes, it becomes really, there's a trade happening there, and we're quite literally exchanging parts of ourselves with people. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't just happen on a physical level, it happens on a deeply emotional level. And then that allows us to become more vulnerable and open. And then when we're in that open space, a chord, an energetic connection is established. So people, and I'm sure this has happened to a lot of your listeners, you might be somewhere and all of a sudden you just think of somebody, and then all of a sudden they walk by you, or you think of your mom or a friend and then they call you 2 seconds later. That's because you are picking up on an energetic level the connection between you and that person. So over time in relationships, work, family, projects, like all of these sort of things, especially our romantic relationships, these chords get established. So what this does is it starts to have you and your partner uh, vibrate in a similar frequency, or if you are, let's say, in a higher vibration because your auric field is maybe more expansive, you will, the way they're showing it to me is like you will help lift their auric field. So when you begin to access different levels of consciousness, the people around you energetically are also lifted in one way or another, consciously or unconsciously, knowingly or unknowingly, into a higher state. So this is where we begin to notice our relationships changing over time, or people will start to say like, oh, you've changed, or you just feel friction with people you didn't feel before. It's because the one frequency has increased and it is trying to pull the other one up, and we do that by just living in our authenticity and living a life, being a good example of what that looks like.
Mm.
And that always looks different. So once we get into this space, as our relationships progress over time, the longer we're around those people, the longer we're in those relationships, the longer we are expanding together and individually within the relationship, the cord gets stronger and stronger. So if at some point, sorry, they're also bringing my attention, there's different ways of chords coming into our experience. One of them could be from a traumatic experience. So say you experience something traumatic, let's just call it, as a child. That could have just been a one-time thing,
Mm-hmm.
but the impact of that on your nervous system, on your emotional body, on your energetic body, it lives within your cells, within your body, within your memory. Like it lives within all of these layers. And what will happen is we have attached a story or an experience to that moment in time. So there could still be a cord, like an anchor, keeping us tethered to that moment in time, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily to the perpetrator. It could also be to the perpetrator, but to the moment in time, like an anchor. So as we progress through life, we will find that these attachments, these cords, maybe you break up with this person and you can still feel them in your field, and it's causing tension in our life. Now, the tension that it causes in our life, it allows our emotional body to signal to us where there are certain energetic blocks so that we can dive into those blocks. We could do shadow work, let's call it. We can learn how to integrate those lessons and learning, and then we can fully process them and let them go. So when we get into a cord cutting, what we are doing is beginning to give ourselves permission to let go of that experience with the intention that we will assimilate the learning, integrate the lesson, and then move forward without the need to attach ourselves to that
Mm.
person or that experience, although that person and or experience is really acting as an identifier within our field to trigger the emotional body so that we can look at things that we need to work through. So some of those triggers could be anger and resentment, which maybe come back to feelings of something being unjust, which might be rooted in your needs being unmet. So now what you really want to be doing is figuring out how to get your needs met without the people around you,
Mm-hmm.
and forgiving those in the past who didn't have the capacity to meet those needs, etc. So there's a lot of different ways this can manifest, but when you get into the actual cord cutting ceremony, like the one that I have, I basically just help you breathe into a relaxed state. We bring up whatever emotions or connections are present for you in that moment, and we set the intention to remove them, and we just kind of quite literally pull them out, unhook them from ourselves. Now, there's different energetic practices I'm doing to also enhance the practice,
Mm-hmm.
but the idea really is to unhook ourselves from anything that keeps us anchored. Like I said, it's also to unhook our energy from those people and call back our energy and call back our pieces. If you imagine yourself like a puzzle,
Mm.
people and experiences, they take a little piece of that puzzle over time. So that puzzle is still you. That piece is still you. It's just been fragmented and taken.
Mm-hmm.
So what we can do is we can retrieve that. We can call that back. We can come into wholeness, and we can ask that it is cleansed and cleared of any and all influences, and then we can begin again. So
Mm.
that's kind of the process in which I work, helping people cut those cords, call back their energy, retrieve the parts of themselves that they lost, whether it was in relationship, through trauma, or whatever. And then ideally, we help make them whole again so that they can move forward
Mm.
and and yeah, begin to just live a different life without the density.
Totally. It's as you're speaking, I'm getting such a feeling of what it is giving us freedom, because sometimes obviously a cord cutting is because you want to disengage completely with someone in your life, and I think that's like a very sort of direct obvious one. But I think also that like, let's use this example of what you said before about a singular trigger moment when you were a kid, like a singular trauma. Every time there's a suggestion that chord might get stronger from that trauma, you see a similar theme reoccurring, is when you don't feel free in yourself because you react, you're almost taken over, you go unconscious to your own, because you can't choose your sort of highest choice of how you respond to that thing because you're in such fear and in such almost try to avoid the trauma from happening to you again. So
Right.
something that is so visceral about cutting cords is that you're free to meet similar themes, moments, people as a different version of yourself because you're no longer looking at it from the corded place, you're no longer looking at it from below. You've been given the ability to rise above it almost, and remember that you are more powerful than the stuff that you've since been able to reclaim, recall back to yourself. And yeah, so I guess wholeness and freedom are sort of very they're very synonymous in this work that you do, right?
Yeah, it's really liberating, and I think the process in itself, like the actual cord cutting ceremony, is to help you for a second get that bird's eye view. But
Mm,
then the intentionality behind the actual practice is that, like you said, you begin to disconnect from the density of the experience and all of the stories and all of the emotions, and then what the
mm,
emotions mean to you, and then that creates another story, and then you're trapped in this cycle of like pain and suffering and frustration and why did this happen to me and this isn't right and they should be mine or I'm jealous or I'm angry or fuck this person or whatever. And it
mm-hmm,
just, we get into this place of like, it's just, we can't see the tree from the forest anymore. So the cord cutting ceremonies and these rituals, really, if that's what you want to call it, is an opportunity for you to just like be where you are, feel what you're feeling, and then
mm,
also give yourself permission to disengage from that experience or person controlling your emotions or controlling, um, keeping you stuck in a place where you almost feel like you're in a jail cell. And we've all been through those breakups where it's like we cannot get that person off our mind. And a lot of that is because it's not even you, it's them thinking about you, and you still have the communication channel open. So you maybe have actually processed, let's say, 90% of that breakup. Maybe they've only processed 30%. Maybe they did something wrong, quote unquote, to you. They lied, they cheated, they were not willing to compromise, they were difficult for whatever reason. And now they're the one who is living in some type of regret or sorrow or suffering, but you haven't done any clearing. And now you are interpreting what you're feeling through the communication channel as your own suffering, but it's not even your suffering. You're picking up that of theirs. Now, this is really important because there's also chords. Like we are intrinsically connected to the collective energy of
mm-hmm.
all humans on planet, all humans on the planet, of the there's an emotional body
Yeah.
that the planet has, an energetic body that the planet has, and we are all connected and rooted within that. But we can choose, and I do this sometimes, I'll just visualize the earth in front of me and I just unplug a cord from it and I pull that cord back to me, and I choose to disengage from that collective pain and suffering because I can't be in that all the time. I won't be able to do anything if I'm constantly feeling the stress, the fear, the genocide, the like pillaging, the just like all of it. Like I don't want to be in that space all the time. I don't want
Mm,
to avoid it, but we need to also take care of ourselves. So that same thing happens when you are with certain friends, and you'll notice when you're around certain people, they want to do something and you just kind of do it, and then later you're like, that was not really like me. And it's like, well, because you're riding that energetic wave with those
mm-hmm.
people. We are all stitching together, let's call it a quilt of friendship, and sometimes, or of interdependency, or of toxic connection, or of trauma bonding, or whatever it is. And we on a conscious level just think they're friends, but on a subconscious level, not to say they aren't, but some of them are definitely just connecting us with a part of ourselves that needs to be witnessed and judged and renewed and released and adjusted in some capacity. And I don't mean judged in a judgmental way. I just
Yeah.
mean like, is this something I want to continue doing, or is this
Mhm.
something I don't want to continue doing? So
Yeah.
those connections with family, friends, lovers, the world, like there's chords everywhere.
Mm,
And what's interesting about this cord cutting workshop is that like it doesn't just help you disconnect from your ex lover. It's also good for you to just be able to call back your energy at any time and figure out how to understand what is yours and what is not yours.
I also wanted to ask you about, you were talking earlier about where different chords can come from. I wanted to ask you about, you know, you obviously form a chord to an extent, probably with everyone that you come across, or are there situations where there are no chords? Does that happen?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know like everything by any means, so I could imagine there are situations where there are no chords. Although, as I say that, it doesn't feel correct. I think like I can always tell when we're getting close to the beginning of the month, when we're getting close to a new moon or a full moon, because I have all of these people wanting to watch their full moon, or sorry, their monthly horoscopes. And then I do the full moon workshop, I do a new moon workshop, and like those get, I don't know, between 20 and 30,000 people a month who are like watching those and engaging with those. So for those moments in time, I can literally feel in my field, and my nervous system gets a little activated, and I start to get maybe a little frustrated, or I feel like anxious or something like that. And yeah, it's because there are so many people thinking about either me or something I'm providing or something that's an extension of me or whatever. So it's almost like they're throwing a little like a fishing line out and it's hooking onto me because they're getting ready to receive something from me. Now, some of those people are quite literally looking to take something, because I get
Mm-hmm.
people for sure who just watch the horoscopes just to feed their own ego, to be told what they want to hear about themselves. Like I'm sure there's, I mean, for sure, like it's human nature. So there's going to be a selected group of people who are in that space, and those are like the takers, so to speak. But then there are people who engage in the content from an autonomous place where they're just wanting to witness what me and my channel have coming through, what messages are there for them. And that is from a space of interest for self work and not necessarily the ego. So there's like the ego space where people want to just kind of take something. And then there's the space of like people who are actually in the work and like connecting with their soul and coming to me to see what messages are resonating with them. So both create chords, but the density of the chords is very different. And
Mm.
the frequency of the chord is different because it's not a chord that is attempting to siphon something off of me. It is a chord. Well, one of them is the taker's chord is here to quite literally, take that energy. But then the other one is like, oh, I just want to connect in and see what's here for me. So again, one of them is lighter, one of them is more dense, but they're both still chords, so to speak. Yeah,
Mm, mm. So yeah, because it brings me back to what you were saying at the beginning, where it's just a connection. At the purest form of it, it's just a sort of an agreement that we make to exchange something
right.
in some way, which can many times and a lot of times be a very beautiful thing. It's just the other stuff that gets picked up along the way that needs to just be cleaned as we go. And I
Yeah.
think everyone is becoming a better energy reader, or at least giving ourselves the permission to trust what we're feeling now. It's becoming much easier to see, or it's becoming we're being given more permission to like live our lives according to that way, because I think we know that the old way of just living too much with logic and analysis is kind of short, it brought us up to a point, but now I really feel this moment where everybody's ready to transcend that sort of just like the mind's uh, empirical observations all the time, and to really trust now, because we just don't have um, that is the best option now of how to navigate this world that is so full of so many changes, um, and in such quick
Yeah, and we have the
succession.
right, yeah, and we have the North Node in Pisces now as well, and the South Node in Virgo, and these are points of fate and destiny. These are collective points. These are the areas of the sky where the eclipses happen. So the North Node in Pisces really is about spirituality, and
Mm-hmm.
about the next year and a half is going to be people really deepening their practice, their connection to themselves, trusting their intuition more. And then the South Node is an area of release, and it's in Virgo, which is like an overthinker and an analytical mind. So we have the next year and a half to really work with this energy to get out of the mind and deeper into the soul and the intuition. And I think that this is going to be a huge time of awakening. And then, of course, to get there, we need the contrast. So this is also why the next year and a half are probably going to be very intense with a lot of things happening globally. And it's just the polarized world that we live in. That's how the whole school is designed. So, but yeah, I agree. I think people are getting out of the mind more and into the just trusting themselves and
Yeah.
trusting, because somebody can say something to you and you can just feel it in the field, like that was not right, so
Yeah.
yeah, people are going to start honoring that more.
Which is beautiful because I think but the more we know that we can't pull the wool over people's eyes just by like thinking we're being so like clever to like manipulate with some kind of like persona on, or like it just doesn't fly anymore. We're just going to try to do that less, and we're going to know that that's not like a rewarding mo to kind of get
Right.
through life or get what we want. So it's like the more people are aware of it, you kind of can't hide, and you kind of know when you're trying something on that's like less than great.
Exactly.
Which is kind
Yeah.
of nice.
Yeah. Why even
um,
try if we're all going to smell it?
yeah, exactly. There's and even the ones where you think it's so well concealed now, you're like, I don't know. I just have a funny feeling about that, and maybe you can't put your finger on why. And that's something that's so relieving to say is like, okay, well, I don't need to be able to explain why I feel what I feel. And what you're
Right.
saying about that Piscean energy, it's Neptune is the god of the underwater. It's not about seeing clearly. It's about going with the feelings and the sort of that watery, tapped, liminal space, or the kind of connection to the unseen and things like that. So
Exactly.
it's a super exciting north node for us to be in, because we're all going to be pushed to stretch ourselves towards that dynamic and that energy, which is great. But it's funny as we're talking about this, because we're talking about us as a collective, and obviously we live like these two layers of life, or three actually, if you think about human design. There's the individual, the tribal, and the collective, and we always have a foot in all three. And so yes, at the same time that people are, you know, witnessing this collective shifts and everything, we also want our own things in our personal lives. And so, because this was an episode we were going to talk about love, I want to ask you about manifesting love, because as my friend Kevin says, people still fell in love in the Second World War. So we always have to be kind of keeping both of those lanes open. And I know that there's so many people who want to either call in a lover, or experience more love with their existing relationships, or have more love with their family. Like, how do we just feel more love, and how do we quote unquote manifest that, according to the messages that you get on all of this?
I mean, there's so many ways, and like the way I see it in this moment of my life is just a culmination of different things that I've experienced and learned, and wisdom I've gathered, and what I'm channeling. So I think there's a lot of different ways you can do it for sure, and I don't want anybody to think this is the only way to do it. But the program we've designed is broken down into pillars, and some of those pillars are focusing on cultivating self-love, because like RuPaul says, like if you can't love yourself, like how is anybody else supposed to love you? And when we don't show up into relationship with full love of who we are, then how could we really truly love somebody else truly? So that is a major step. I think also authenticity, which is either as high a vibration as love, because everyone always talks about love is the highest vibration, and like authenticity is either equal or greater. So this idea of truth and authenticity and full expression is just intrinsically tied to our ability to love ourselves, to speak our mind, to communicate our needs, to witness when something is aligned with us or isn't aligned with us. And we don't gaslight ourselves into staying
Mm,
in a relationship. We don't gaslight ourselves into thinking we'll never find somebody better. So this is one of the major pillars for sure, is cultivating self-love. There's a lot of different ways we can do that. There's, traditional ways like affirmations and mirror work, and then there's other ways that are just you carving out more time in your life for you, like literally taking yourself or giving yourself, extra time in the morning to properly even just moisturize your body, for example. And it's like, it doesn't need to be like you're just lathering it on so that you can run out the door. It's like really sitting with yourself and like really, really being present and witnessing like the care you give yourself with making sure you are moisturizing every part of your body, like
Mm,
slowly, intentionally. So there's little practices like that that are these like let's call it a micro practice, which helps build the momentum. And the more you do that over time, the more you begin to really witness and believe that you do love yourself. And
mm,
that is one way to connect deeper into the self love. And then there's also a whole shadow work aspect where we need to explore cutting cords like we talked about. So the love, I believe it's called Calling in Love. The Calling in Love workshop is secondary to the cord cutting because you really need to do the cord cutting first. This is where the shadow work, one element of the shadow work begins. This is how you clear and create more space, and then we access these other modules. So the Calling in Love portion for your self love is super important, and then the next part we look at romanticizing your life because how are you going to call love into your life when you don't see how romantic your life is already? So this
mm,
idea of like lighting candles at breakfast, like everything. It doesn't need to be a special occasion for you to smell good and feel sexy and wear your sexy lingerie. Or um, if you're really looking for a partner, have you cleared out a drawer in your bedroom for them? Like, are you making space, physical space in your life? Are you cleaning shit out? Do you have old bracelets? And not to say that you can't have like a photo of your ex lover, because like I've got a box of things, and I've got a lot of planets in Cancer, so I have like that like attachment moment for sure. But like I don't wear those pieces. I don't look through those pieces all the like ever really. So like what in your life is constantly signaling to you either heartbreak, past life issues, like past love issues in this life, I mean.
mm.
Where are you constantly reminded that love is difficult, that love is stressful, that
Wow.
love never works out? So there's little ways like this where that almost ties into the shadow work aspect, but we clear that and then we make more space for romanticizing our life, like I said. So are you comfortable going out for dinner alone? Are you
Mm,
comfortable going to a movie alone? Are you comfortable going and taking a class somewhere by yourself just for the love of it? So
mm.
this is a really important part as well. And then we eventually work our way into some like ceremony style stuff. I hate using the word ritual because people always think ritual is such a scary thing. They're thinking I'm like sacrificing animals or something, but you can do a candle ritual where you just carve certain sigils or symbols into the candle that represent love. You anoint it with a rose oil, you light some
Beautiful.
incense. So like there's different practices.
Mm,
So yeah, we get into the actual practices to begin to actually activate the frequency of partnership in our life, and then making way for that. But
that's
a lot of it
beautiful.
also comes down to like where you are too, right? Like where,
Mm,
like physically, where are you? Like, are you on your couch all day and not leaving the house? Like, you're not going to find a partner there. So you also need to be out and like let people know you're looking just by the way you walk into a room, by the way you communicate. Like there's ways of keeping your energy open and vulnerable, and not in an unsafe way, but like if you're sitting at the bar or you go to a restaurant, you're on your phone the whole time, not looking around, you've got closed body language. Like there's all these little pieces to it. So again, it's not like the love workshop is just one size fits all, take this and you'll be done, you'll fall in love immediately. Like no, it's a culmination of pieces that are going to support you on that journey. But I promise you, if you follow those pillars and you actively engage in them and build that momentum, you will notice the shifts even internally. And as soon as things start shifting internally, which really is our goal, then the external world begins to reflect that back. So, um, yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell what we focus on there. And I think outside of that workshop, that's just like I think one of the best ways and healthiest ways to begin to actually call love into your life.
mm. And I love what you said about romanticizing life and, the lighting candles at breakfast and things, because I think often we think we want a relationship because that's what it's going to bring to our lives. But there's such a beauty and a strength in remembering that anything that we create in our life is because it has to come from us. Like, we have to bring the energy to the moment to imprint that on the moment. And so
Right.
also reminding yourself that you could be in a relationship and have a completely devoid of any type of sensuality and color and beauty. I mean, I've been in relationships like that before because I thought it took me off the hook of having to bring that to my
Right.
world, to my movie, right? And I also think so much about what you said about putting lotion on. That's funny that you say that because that's sort of my thing that I do.
Amazing.
And I often think when I'm doing that, that so much of the time I think our cultural conditioning reserves any slightly sensual act for sex only,
Right.
and that we can't bleed that into, I can moisturize myself without turning it into some kind of like jumping on a man, like,
Right.
or without having to rise with a scarf in the mirror. Like, I can just put on cream in a beautiful way and have Tony Braxton playing in the background and just like have that be 5 minutes and then I'm on with my day. And so there's something so nice about the remembrance of, like, you can have those micro moments without them having to, derail, for quote unquote of a better word, or lead you to be some kind of, I don't know. It's like we live in this like very binary thing with sensuality, I feel often, where we just don't allow that to be just like a normal background frequency of how we move through the day in general. Like, even working out, like, why would you not work out in like a more feminine type of way? And why wouldn't you just kind of, like you said, like touch your arms when you're moving, or put on your socks in a beautiful way and stuff like that? It is a
Yeah.
more loving way of feeling life.
And it's also like creating the space for you to really slow down. Like, just slowing
Mm,
down in a society that expects us to be moving at 100% speed all the time, and constant production and constant doing and buying and thinking and talking. It's like it's such a rebellious act to just be like, I'm not going to rush through my morning routine. I'm going to take a minute for myself. And even when you brush your teeth, are you like frantically brushing your teeth just to get it done? Or are you, and I catch myself doing that because like
mm,
I'm, a human. I grew up in North America. Like, I live in Portugal now, which is much slower, which I'm really grateful for. But I still catch myself when I'm brushing my teeth, just be like, stop. Like,
mm,
I'll pull the toothbrush out, I'll take like 3 breaths just to like seriously slow myself down. And then I will slowly brush my teeth with the intention and awareness that I'm doing this as an act of self care, of self love, not because I need to brush my teeth so I can get it out of the way so I can go be productive for something. So,
mm,
like, shifting the way we engage, and making sure once a week you're going and you're buying yourself fresh flowers, and you're just keeping beautiful things in your home, and you're tapping into that Venusian energy, that Venus energy, where it's like creating something, like painting something, typing something out on a typewriter, like, singing in the shower, but like really to be present in the moment and to actually really enjoy what it is you're doing, and to find love in what it is that you're doing. And it sounds like such a basic thing, and it also sounds kind of just like a cliche, like,
mm-hmm,
oh, whatever. But the more you intentionally carve out time to do that every day, and you only have to focus on today, and like tomorrow you'll focus on tomorrow, which will be today tomorrow, you know what I mean? So it's like you're only focusing on today. And if you continue to build that momentum, you will see a difference. Like, you have to see a difference because your frequency is changing, and the quantum field is responding to your frequency. So if you are shifting internally, your external world will shift, and you'll begin to care less, to buy into these ideas of scarcity or rushing around or like whatever it is. So
mm,
there really is a beautiful thing in just slowing down, and yeah, taking time for yourself to just remind yourself that like you actually do care. And sometimes that's not so difficult, or well, yeah, sometimes it's not so difficult. Sometimes it is difficult. Um, but it's
mm,
just carving out your time, holding those boundaries. And like, boundaries is such a good way to continue to remind yourself that you're taking care of yourself, which is rooted in
mm.
love, and that's just gonna attract more love into your life.
And both times, I think the times when it's easy to love yourself is great. And the times when you or catch yourself with your mind not wanting to like yourself is also great, because that's when you say, I'm going to practice giving you love, right? Being loving towards myself when
Right.
my mind is giving me a ton of criticisms or whatever it is. And so then you kind of can witness that love coming out of you, that love muscle. And that's when you're like, oh, look how loving of a person I can be. And that makes you appreciate yourself more, because we love loving people, right? So
Right.
it's so lovely to have the times when it is hard and see those times as such good opportunities to flex how much heart you can like bring to yourself. And then, like you were saying earlier, then you know how to, that muscle is strong, you can be more loving towards, when you're when one of your parents annoys you, or when your partner annoys you, or when you're looking for a partner, right? You can be more forgiving, and
Right.
you're not looking for the perfect person. All of that stuff kind of happens as a natural side effect of when you've practiced giving yourself love anyway, despite,
Right.
you know.
And it doesn't always look like trying to, and not that this is what you were just saying, but just like as a secondary comment,
Mm,
it doesn't always look like trying to change that state. Like, I'm stressed right now, I'm sad right now, I'm going to try to love myself into joy, or love myself out of this frustration, or like, love is just giving yourself
mm,
enough compassion to be in the shit that you're in that moment. And if you only have 10% to give that day, not forcing yourself to give 100%, letting yourself give only 10%. And
mm,
like, if you only have 10% and you give 10%, then you just gave 100% that day. And being
mm,
able to have enough self-love and compassion to be like, this is where I'm at today. I'm really struggling. I am not going to force myself out of this. I'm going to let myself be in this. This too shall pass. I'm going to move these emotions. The only way to move them is to feel them up and
yeah,
out. And it's like, and to give yourself the grace of just being where you are when you are feeling heartbroken or frustrated or whatever is like such a loving thing to do. And then what it does is it allows you to build that muscle of compassion. So when you're in relationship and your partner's having a rough day, you're not sitting there trying to shift their energy, change their energy. You're not complaining about them. You're just like,
mm,
cool, that's how you are
yeah,
today. I'm here. Like, whatever you need, let me know. And like, be in it, be in the shit for a second. It'll
mm,
pass, So,
mm. It's beautiful. I love that. It's there's a really nice exercise I force myself to do when I'm, well, ask myself to do when I'm in those moments, which is just, most humans are good. I try to stalk for the innocent motivation behind everything, right? If I'm feeling frustrated, I can pull on the part of me that understands completely why I have every justification to feel that way. And then I just say, it's okay. It's so sweet that you feel that way. Actually, it comes from a nice place in you. It's not, I think we're so hard on ourselves when we feel these what we would call negative emotions, that we think that it means that there's a bad part of us. But actually, usually these, like anger can be holy, and frustration can be a divine message, and so on and so forth. And so, that is what being loving is giving ourselves the understanding, the pace, the compassion, the conversation with the two parts of us. And then, like you said, it does make you so much better at how you relate to anyone else. Instead of the first day that you're with someone in a relationship and you see them have a rough day, you're like, they're not the person for me, or whatever it is.
right, or that you have to try to like, not to say that you shouldn't, try to cheer someone up sometimes. It's like,
Yeah.
of course, like that's part of human nature. Like, but like when they're in a bad mood, like you don't always need to give them advice. You don't always need to try to shift their mood. You don't always need to try to cheer them up. You can just let them be where they are and
Hmm.
let them go through their process and just remind them that you're there. And like, if you need anything, let me know. And it's like, that's such a stronger way of building relationship than being like, every time you're sad, I'm going to try to change the state of you so that you're not affecting me in this container. It's like a whole
Mm-hmm.
skewed thing. And these parts of ourselves that we consider to be dense or bad or whatever, it's like, well, yeah, like we're human. Like, we are dense and we are bad and we are good and we are all of the things. So it's like, I don't think trying to adjust everything all the time is required. And
Mm.
I think that it's healthy to be fucking pissed sometimes. And does that mean you have to walk around and like spew like poison all over everybody and you need to like make your bad day everyone else's bad day? Like, no, by no means do I think that's healthy. But like, if you need to be in your home, in private, alone, and in a bad mood all day, then be in a bad mood and hate every little thing. And then the
Mm.
next day, it will, you'll have shifted something because you're not feeling that hatred, that anger, that frustration come up and then trying to push it back down, being like, I'm just going to love myself through this and swallow this. And like, I'm going to be happy and go lucky and whatever. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's like, we have so much of that sort of, I mean, such an overused phrase, but like so much of that spiritual bypassing taking place. And real love is actually letting you just be pissed
Hmm.
that day.
Hmm.
And again, not going outside and making that everyone else's problem and ruining everyone else's day, but like, if you're angry, be angry. Go to the beach and scream at the top of your lungs and get it
Hmm.
out of your body. Like, that's one of the best ways to love yourself is to just be where you are and let yourself move through it.
Yeah, and that's I guess the overused phrase to that is true accept. That's real love is just real acceptance of exactly as things are,
Right,
without this sort of knee jerk need to shift things in order to feel okay again. Like you have to. It's almost like training ourselves to feel okay and feel okay whilst you're angry. Feel okay with the being angry or feel okay with
right.
whatever is coming up. I remember. In COVID, I was living in the south of France at the time, and I was stuck in a very tiny apartment. We couldn't leave the house without a permit. It wasn't just like you could go to the park and walk around. And I remember just
Wow.
resorting to like hitting the pillow against the bed like over and over and over again. And then afterwards, because I had allowed myself to get it out, I remember I would start giggling and I would be
For sure.
hysterical because there's such a there's such a levity to actually what we are afraid is so dark and heavy. When you kind of let it move out, it's never as the idea of embracing it is always more scary before you've actually embraced it, and then it shifts, and then you're actually, like you said, something changed. You've created some kind of alchemical inside thing of whatever that feeling was supposed to do to your insides has actually occurred. Um,
Right.
so then you've like tangibly noticed something lighten you up, even though you thought it was something maybe scary or heavy or uncomfortable to feel.
Yeah. And like those moments of like discomfort or the things that are quote unquote like bad or heavy or negative or whatever, it's like they're actually not any of those things. That is just some category or label that we are associating with that emotion or with that feeling. Like everything is actually just neutral.
Mm,
Like it just is what it is. It doesn't have to be the story or the identifier that you or that the collective has attached to it over
mm,
time through the lens of religion or government or whatever. So it's like when we get into those states of like, this is anger, I'm feeling guilty that I'm so angry because anger is a bad emotion and now I'm a bad person or like whatever it is. It's like, oh my God, like dismantle all of these labels and categories because nothing in this world is actually anything. And this is getting like super zoomed out and like meta
mm-hmm,
style, but like at the end of the day, nothing is anything. It's the charge that we give it. So anything that you're witnessing, and yeah, there could be moments of, well, it's like, well, this is clearly a bad thing. Like, murder is bad or this is bad. And it's like, yeah, I'm not talking about like, obviously, there's certain things as humans I disagree with. Um, Meaning, like, that is not how I would want to live my life, nor do I think that that's acceptable. Um, that being said, the majority of the experience that we have is something happens and then we are creating a judgment and a story around that that leads to an emotion and that's triggering something in us that actually is rooted in something deeper that needs to be looked at because we're the ones who, you only need to worry about yourself. You only need to take care of
mm,
yourself. And the sooner that you can focus on what is moving in you and then you can use that as an identifier to understand the root of it behind that.
Mm,
That's where you should be doing your work, not trying to label and categorize and point fingers at what's happening around you because this is good and that's bad and how could this person do that and this is it's like
mm,
these are all ego traps for you to take the attention out and off of yourself and to put it onto something outside of you so that you can blame that for being the issue
mm,
because that was bad and that was rude. No, that actually wasn't anything. You've
mm,
attached a story to that, and that story has an emotion, and that emotion is deeply rooted in some unresolved emotion. So there's always like
mm.
a double layer of emotion here. I talk about
Yeah.
this in like I'm writing a book right now and we go a bit deeper into this idea, but there's the trigger, and then that trigger has a story, and that story has an emotion. And then that emotion actually stems from a deeper story, and that story has a deeper emotion, and that is the real issue. So if you can actually back out from the experience, not just once, but twice, you'll see that it's like that experience made me feel angry, and that anger is from my needs being unmet. Well, where earlier in my life were my needs unmet, and then how did that make me feel? Oh, that made me feel like I'm not important to my family. Okay, I have issues around self-worth. That's really
Mm,
what's going on, not the first emotion you felt. You know what I mean? So
mm,
being able to back things out is important, but you have
mm,
to do a lot of that work to then get yourself to a place where you begin to start seeing things as neutral because you don't have so many of these emotional indicators happening within your body.
mm.
Um, which, yeah, it takes time, it takes work, but like everybody can get there, you know?
Of course. And I almost feel that it's a universe kind of graciously giving us the pebbles constantly until we do make those connections of being able to, like you said, zoom out and see the root thing. Because, to go back to what you were saying at the top of this conversation, we all need to know how to meet our own needs. And if you don't
Right.
know, and to the extent where we don't know that we have a need, then these triggers actually help us uncover and get to the root of the clarity of, different people. We all have different kinds of needs. We all value different things differently. And unless we, or even if we sometimes actively try to find out what those things are, there's things we might overlook. And so life is always on this curriculum to kind of bring more things to light about ourselves that we didn't see before. And there's always, you're right, it's always back down to something else that is actually, seemingly unrelated, except for tied by the narrative that we tell about what they both mean to us. And that's also what makes, though, learning about yourself so much fun, because
Totally.
it's a game that every time you learn more about yourself, you do appreciate yourself more. You do have more understanding for yourself. You do then love and have so much tenderness towards the journey that you've been on, that has brought you to the place that you are at now from where you were. Um,
And like
so nice.
looking at which layer of your needs is being met, because like what we just described with like there's the first so there's the trigger, and then there's the emotion and the story, and then you can go back to the actual emotion and the story that's below that is like, let's call that the surface story and then the deeper story. Well, a lot of us get stuck in trying to self-soothe and meet our needs at the surface story instead of
Mm,
actually going back to the deeper story where the actual healing would take place. So if you get triggered and you get upset and now you're all uncomfortable and you want to go into some self-soothing technique to have your needs met in that moment, which is I'm uncomfortable and I want to be comfortable, then this is where we typically will grab a cigarette or something to eat, or we'll go shopping, or like you get in that little loop of what's a quick fix. But if you can go back to the deeper level, the deeper story, and you can meet the deeper need, then eventually get to the point where once that deeper need is met, that surface need, that surface trigger, that surface level experience is way less likely to happen. Or when it does happen, it has less impact on you because you know how to actually meet your deeper needs. And those deeper needs being met comes back to this entire conversation, which is just
mm,
self love. It's like I can tell when something triggers me and I have a moment of freak out, and then I'm all stressed, and then I just want to go have a latte or something that's going to soothe me in that moment. But I'm sitting there thinking, like, did I actually wake up early enough and stretch my body? Did I do my qigong this morning? Have I meditated today? Like, have I tapped in with myself and given myself what I need before I even stepped out into the world? And it's
Mm,
like the deeper need was not met that day. So, of course, the surface need is going to be this trigger point, and I'm going to be overly activated, and I'm going to reach for a surface level solution. When it's like, if
mm,
you can get ahead of that and you can understand the deeper need overall, because we all have these deeper needs. What is the deeper need? The deeper need for me is that, like, I need to take time for myself because there are so many people pulling on me and needing something from me. I also run like two companies and I have like 35 employees, and like there's always something to do. I'm a content creator. There's always something to film. There's always something to
mm,
design. And I'm just like, if I just wake up and dive into that,
mm,
my deeper need is not met. So then
mhm,
I go through the day and I'm triggered and I'm just trying to find a surface-based solution for the
mhm,
surface-based need, which is like, I'm uncomfortable, give me a coffee. I'm uncomfortable, smoke a joint. I'm
mm,
uncomfortable, go shopping. It's like, no, wake up and deal with the deeper need. And for me to deal with the deeper need, that means I have to understand that I'm fully worth the time to do that, which is a deeper practice of self-love. I'm not going to wake up and brush my teeth quickly and run out the door. I'm going to intentionally slow down and moisturize my body for
mhm,
15 minutes. I'm going to brush my teeth slowly and intentionally. I'm going to give myself 10 minutes to meditate. Like, all of this is a boundary and a practice for cultivating deeper self-love. And the more you do that, the more you radiate out love. And it's like, the realistically, like, as I started doing these practices even deeper and more intentionally over the last couple like weeks and months, like, I literally have actually met somebody, and we're like still exploring that, and it's like a long distance thing at the moment, but we see each other quite frequently, and like there's just this deeper appreciation for myself, for that connection. I see that this person, because I'm doing the work, is also in a healthier state. Like, my frequency has attracted somebody in a healthier frequency. So that experience of love is completely different. Like, it's it just ripples out. It's crazy. So
mhm.
yeah, it's all actually tied together. You know what I mean? It's not just
Totally.
like love is over here, triggers are over there, cycles are over here. Like, it's all the same thing. So
That's the thing about life. It's like a dizzyingly confusing mush of all these things happening at the same time, and it's always a lot of data points. Um,
totally.
and I think what's beautiful as well about what I've learned about knowing my own needs, what my actual needs are, and I've never heard it be described in that way. And you've really just put words to what it feels like. But what I've really learned about knowing my own needs is that actually, when you ask for the things that you need, most people are happy to give them to you.
Absolutely.
They just need to know your cues, because if we have to be in charge of ourselves, then okay, the person who really needs affection should be really asking for affection. And the person who
Right.
needs alone time, and not that these are exclusive, but we're kind of happy if you do me a favor and tell me what you need. And it's not going to take from me to really do that for you, or allow that. And it also gives you a little bit back of the self responsibility, right? If I want more kind of there's a French word called câlin. It's like more coziness in my relationships. That's again me not wanting to just expect that I either have to attract new people who are like that, or people who are not that have to leave. It's actually, if I bring that and I practice bringing that to the people who are already in my life, my God, my experience of them is so different. I pull out that side of them if they have one. And so it kind of gives you the power back again, to use like an overused phrase, but it really does, because you realize like, oh, when I know my needs, it's actually a beautiful energy that I'm bleeding into the world as well,
Right.
of a person who is in deeper self-knowing. And that's a very softened, open, inviting type of energy for other people to experience.
Well, and so many of us have such a skewed, misrepresented understanding of what love actually is because we grew up in certain homes or environments, or there were early relationships or romances where we needed to self abandon and self sacrifice, and we needed to water down our own needs for the peace in the home or peace in the relationship or whatever. So we've been trained over and over and over, especially the
Mm,
subconscious, because there's so many so many of us experience this at such a young age when we're just like saturating, or we're saturated with so many examples, whether they're good or bad. We're just learning from these examples. So if you're in a family dynamic where there's chaos in the home, or your needs are going unmet, or anytime you ask for something, you need money for something, it's like, oh, I pay for everything, or I give you this, or like, just be happy with what you've got, or this or that. You
Mm,
experience this. Well, at some point in time, it's like, okay, for me to be loved, I need to not ask for things. I need to not share my
yeah.
needs. I need, like, that's what I need to cultivate for safety in this
Hmm.
experience. And then later in life, we want to apply that same rule. But what it does is it just creates an increasingly more and more frustrating experience for us because our needs are going unmet. And like I said, then we're just trying to slap a band-aid on these surface needs where
Mm,
we just need a cigarette, or we just need this. And then we get into an addictive state for self-soothing, and like whatever, that compounds over time. But
mm,
for us to actually remove that understanding and remove that conditioned belief that, like, for me to be loved, I need to not ask for
mm,
my real needs to be met. For me to be loved, I need to not share my opinion, or I need to water myself down, or I need to,
mm,
like, that's part of the deep work that we need to do. And then we can begin to show up in relationships and have the confidence to say, like, I don't like when you did that because that made me feel XYZ. Or a lot of us don't even have the language to talk like that
yeah.
in relationships. You know what I mean? We're not taught how to properly communicate what we're feeling, or to identify those feelings. So
Mm,
yeah, like, there's a lot of unraveling we need to do about what we've learned in relationships. And that also comes down to, like, if you watched your mother, as a single mother, or your parents, you come from a broken home or whatever, then there's going to be a belief system that, like, home is maybe not safe. Home is not where you are taken care of. Relationships always fail, or relationships fall apart, or people, and it's like, we really need to be aware of those programs and those belief systems, because they're operating in the subconscious, and the subconscious is really driving the majority of our decisions.
mm,
So removing that, liberating yourself, cutting those cords, activating self love, self care, romanticizing your life, bringing all this back to you being healthy, you're going to start attracting healthier relationships. And then when they show up, you can actually feel confident communicating what you need, getting your needs met, and then you can actually build real love and relationships with people, you know?
mm. You know what I really, really am loving about everything you're saying, and what I'm really getting from you is that you are not the just the subconscious guy, or just the man of the affirmations guy. The reason I say that, and not that there's anything incorrect about any of those things, but I love the fact that you've taken every single factor into account, and that you take a real 360 approach to the subjects that you look at. You know, you look at every piece and every possible contributor to what has created a certain scenario in your life. Like, you're really doing kind of cause and effect across the whole board, which I really think is ultimately the type of life review that needs to happen if we want to make a change. Because it's not always, and I think we've heard so much of this kind of like clickbaity stuff, especially with social media, which sometimes is a bit too reductive, where it's like, if you think the X, then you will get Y, which no, because there's actually loads of different things that could make Y happen. And I
Right.
really appreciate the speaking to you that, you know, in the things that you offer to the world, they're so comprehensive, and you have like a toolbox and a menu that people could, you know, take a look at the whole entire picture to get the result that they're desiring from something, which I think is so not seen enough. And you really, it's so obvious to me from speaking to you that that's something you naturally do.
Yeah, I mean, humans are complex, so, like, we need complex solutions. Like, and a complex solution doesn't need to be a difficult solution, because
Mm,
these solutions are actually, I would say, for the majority of the things we're talking about, are quite simple.
mhm,
They're not easy in the sense that it'll just happen, because you do need to commit to them. You need to build the momentum. You need to watch where your mind goes. You need to have a little bit of that healthy delusion where you're just walking around being like, I am love, even if you don't believe it that day. Like, I still am love. I am lovable. I am, you know what I mean? And like, that level of delusion is what has made me literally millions of dollars. Like I've had nothing and I have had to give up my last like, $40 just to get gas in my car so I could get to a job so I could make more money. And it was like being in that state, I would always be like, it's fine. I'm a millionaire. I'm a millionaire. Don't worry about it. And I would actively do the shadow work and I would actively do the practices but it's the culmination of everything. So
Hmm.
again, humans are so multifaceted and complex that we can't just focus on like, just think this all the time. Like that doesn't work. It's not to say it isn't helpful, but it is much more helpful when it is a piece of a larger puzzle and process as opposed to just like, focusing on one modality and hoping that that's going to solve all your issues. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it just is what it is.
I think it's really doing right by people to not reduce or simplify things. And I think in tandem with us all becoming better energy readers, it's so lovely to have voices that kind of cover all of those things to really give licensing to where our brains are going. But sometimes you need someone to sort of go first and explain it or explore that territory for you, and you go, oh yes, like I said to you earlier, like, oh, you put words to that thing, that those layers that I never really consciously had thought about myself but felt is true and is how it is. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
And obviously, I mean, you give so much and you offer so much, and the twice weekly, twice monthly workshops and the ones that you can get a la carte. I'm as far as correct me if I'm wrong, but you do the cord cutting. You can do that anytime that you want to, and you have this manifesting love and new moon and full moon and even what you were saying about the tarot, which I love the tarot scopes on your Instagram every month. So if you are enjoying this human's consciousness and what's expressing through him, there's a lot more to get into. And just thank you so much for this conversation. It was super expansive and inspiring and full of good reminders and recentering.
Yeah, and I think that's really what our work is just reminding people of what they already know because there's nothing that I'm saying that should be I mean, people might have a bit of an aha moment or a light bulb might turn on again, but like the light bulb was already there, right? It was already screwed in. So it's like I want people to also remember that like I'm not special, like none of us are overly none of us are more special than the other. Like everybody can access everything that we're talking about. And yeah, as you mentioned, we have a lot of resources to support everybody. We did, I think, one second, what did they make it? They made a code Jenna 22 for all your listeners also if they want to
Oh, thank
do,
you.
yeah. So then you guys will get 22% off of the Calling in Love workshop. And as we mentioned, there's a cord cutting workshop, and we have a bunch of stuff on the website. So feel free to take a look and do what feels good or don't, and whatever. It's there. But I'm super happy we got a chat, and yeah, thank you for having me.